I want to introduce you to some phenomenal people that we've been working with. And what we're going to present to you over the course of the next hour is really a kind of tapestry of possibility in the storytelling landscape. We have some folks here that are also colleagues, witnesses here. The Global Impact Producers Forum is here. DocuBox is here. All of us together function as a kind of support system in storytelling. And one of the things that I learned going, through Sundance and particularly at Ford Foundation is that while stories are key and central, stories themselves are not enough. And so what we propose to the Skoll Foundation is that we need narrative infrastructure. We actually need nodes and networks and support mechanisms so that the stories themselves can be born, can flourish, can be distributed, et cetera. So that is what you're going to see here, is a little bit of a kind of a sampling of the innovative work that's happening kind of at the cutting edge of the storytelling, ecosystem as we see it. And IRIS, with the partnership with Skoll, has been building out that ecosystem, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to introduce the panel. We're going to start with Sunshine Cinema. We are going to move then to Electric South. Then we're going to come to Video Consortium. And then at the end, we're going to hear some research from Sandy Hertz, who's been talking to leaders around the world about the role of philanthropy. So with that said, I'll go ahead and start us off. What is IRIS? For those of you that don't know what IRIS is a donor collaborative. We are working with 9 donors now, and the sort of offering is if you have a strategy, gender, climate, whatever your topic is, and you want to think about weaving a cultural and storytelling strategy inside that, you come to IRIS. And we have 9 donors that are working with us on this. So it's a donor collaborative learning space. We think of it increasingly as a kind of sandbox for the partners that we work with, a storytelling sandbox to experiment with both narrative strategies and storytelling. I want to just say something about the world that we live in. I've used this quote, this thought quite a bit, and sit with it for a minute. In today's world, we all grew up in a world that's, I'll believe it when I see it, right? Show me some evidence. Give me some proof. This is where journalism comes in. Tell me what I should know. But now, we live in a world that's much more like I'll see it when I believe it. Fractured worlds, ideologies driving us. This is partially the effect of the tech platforms and algorithms kind of creating these spaces of disbelief and distrust. And so when you're functioning in a world that's I'll see it when I believe it, storytelling becomes one of the main tools that you need to be using. So what we've developed at IRIS is a way of working. Take a picture of this as opposed to reading it and then read it later. But I wanted to show you this graphic because one of the things in the cultural realm that we're trying to work out is how you talk about the way that culture helps create change. It is a nonlinear pattern. It's not linear. And we're used to thinking about things like A to B to C to D, but in culture, that's not the way things work. So we tried to create a kind of spiral of activity, impact over time, increasing as you repeat, and then you layer, and then you compound your impact through storytelling. So this is kind of our contribution, our effort to think about how it is that we build narrative and storytelling infrastructure in a way that's impactful. And so this is what we've been working on with the Skoll Foundation, is trying to think about how we convene people, how we support innovative and transformative models. So each of the people up here represents some aspect of that narrative and story for impact ecosystem. So you'll hear more. We're trying to kind of give you some color about how each of these points on the spiral actually works. So we've been working, just to give you a sense, we've been giving grants to catalyzers and to innovators. There are about 25 grants in our Skoll and IRIS portfolio. We've been functioning in, or focusing on Central America. We have a lot of work in Sub-Saharan Africa, and we also supported some of our colleagues in the MENA region. So this is the ecosystem. And just for fun, this is another picture. We tried to imagine, we do a lot of visualizing. We tried to imagine the network connections among all these grantees, and that's what kind of came out as like amoebas in a petri dish, right? we're still working on how we visualize the network impact, but this is just a start. And so you can see, the convenings kind of intersecting with the leaders, intersecting with the content, with the new platforms that we're putting together. We have supported content out of this portfolio with Skoll. The Falling Sky is a beautiful film. You can go to the QR code to read the Variety review. It went to Cannes. It's an award-winning film about sort of the Amazonian perspective on what's happening in the world today. So it's related to climate change, which is very much a part of what Skoll Foundation is focusing on. We have supported resources and convenings through our signature gathering Confluence, which some of you have attended. We have a narrative directory, and we have a narrative commons that has, a kind of up-to-date research on various aspects of the sectors that we're working in. So, for instance, labor rights, workers' rights, well-being. There's a list in this commons library, and we're supporting a portion of the commons library with these resources. Here are some of the grantees, some of the folks you'll see in the room with us that we've been working with, just to give you a sense of what it means to be a catalyzer, a sort of groundbreaker in this space. And this is the IRIS website, if you want a QR code to that. And then I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter, Sydelle.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with all of you. Hello, my name is Sydelle. I'm the co-founder of Sunshine Cinema. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. And Sunshine Cinema is a solar-powered mobile cinema network run by young people who we train as impact facilitators. We started the organization because we were frustrated as filmmakers and photographers that so much of the material we were making with grassroots activists was not being seen by the activists themselves and the people on the ground. In the places where we live, airtime and data and internet is very expensive. So initially, it began as a distribution network for film, but it has grown into a network of over 100 young people who we've trained collectively in the last 6 years through partnerships with the likes of the University of Cape Town, as well as the learnings of our friends in the room like GIPA and Doc Society, in how to use film as a tool for social dialogue, how to use cinemas as a space to bring people together in a physical space who maybe don't agree, who come from different backgrounds, who can then have conversations, who can work on solutions, who can drive social action from the ground up. So in this, we have initiated the approach of seeds of cinema. So how can you use cinema as a seed to plant those ideas, whether it's around climate or gender or justice, and how can these young people not only make money from those screenings as entrepreneurs in places where there's over 60% youth unemployment, but how can we then bring people together to find hope, to find disagreement, and work through those issues collectively. And we've seen, for example, showing films about gender equity, that solutions have come up from those screenings around building safe spaces for women to walk safely at night, inspired by those screenings, or recycling groups based on screenings around climate. But I think one of the best ways to show what we do is to show you a short film about our work.
I go around, especially rural communities, showcasing free film screenings to bring people together. We're building social cohesion through films, and we get to speak about issues that we were facing.
Some of the factors that I've noticed in my community concerning climate change is how our crops are now little. Sometimes some of the families go for days without water because river waters are dry. What inspired me to actually take this route of defending climate is because my parents were subsistence and commercial farmers. My late dad would always advocate for organic manure because he wanted to preserve the soil.
I am part of a national network of impact facilitators. We are called the Spark Impact Ambassadors and are trained by Sunshine Cinema to use cinema as a tool for community impact.
Gathering people through solar cinema has become that one tool that drives awareness, and it really motivates people to actually take action. The support that I've been getting from my family is very overwhelming. Sometimes when accolades, recognitions reach out, I just wish that my dad was here. Climate change is a social justice issue, and it requires all of us to take action. I'm looking forward to continuing this route, this journey, because it's the only one I know.
So for us, it's not just about the screenings, as I said, because narrative infrastructure isn't only about the stories. It's about who gets to make them, who gets to tell them, and who gets to circulate them, and who gets to act on them. So really for us, it's about looking at how can you work with young people in rural communities and peri-urban communities who are often considered the last mile, off-the-grid audiences, and how can you look at strengthening that social fabric and be part of that broader ecosystem that so many incredible organizations in this room and on this panel are working towards. And we're really excited by the partnerships that we're able to build. So thank you very much for listening. And I'll hand it over to Ingrid.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you, Cara, for bringing us here today. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm Ingrid Kopp. I am also based most of the time in South Africa, in Cape Town, and I run Electric South, which is a non-profit based in Cape Town, working across Africa. And we are really interested in immersive storytelling. And one of the things I kind of feel like I have to get out the way is, I know now when I say things like virtual reality and the metaverse, everyone's eyes roll back in their heads and they're imagining these sort of legless torsos in a cartoon world. And we're very, very aware that all of that is happening and has happened. But what we are doing is behind the scenes working on all these incredible technologies that are still enabling people to tell stories in really interesting ways. Using reality capture technologies like volumetric and motion capture and LiDAR scanning. It is enabling artists that we work with across the continent to not only tell stories in new ways, but also engage audiences in new ways. One of the things that we've found is people are still really excited to step into virtual worlds, especially young people. And it has been an amazing way also to think about technology and people-powered technology. So when you're talking about sort of narrative infrastructure and the way that all of the work that we're doing is sort of leading towards something, one of the ways that we think about the work of Electric South is not just in the individual stories that we produce, most of which are nonfiction, but it's also in the way that artists in Africa are using technology and the way that use of technology is enabling them to think about the future and to think about what futures are possible outside of the visions of Silicon Valley. So in a way, the sort of legless torsos, we're kind of imagining futures way beyond that. So what I'm going to do is I'll just quickly show you a video. This is from one of our labs. We run an annual New Dimensions lab where we bring artists, interdisciplinary artists from across Africa, journalists, fine artists, photographers, architects, together to explore what these new technologies can do for their practice and how they can use these new technologies to engage with audiences in different ways. So I'll just play a little bit of a clip from the advisors talking about how New Dimensions works.
It's an amazing, intense week. You're surrounded by many talented people, your peers, all working in different disciplines, and you get to learn from them. You're also surrounded by advisors who come from different spaces, who can really help you grow, not just in the lab, but also afterwards.
We're big believers in tech, we're big believers in art. We're really big believers that when you combine art and technology together, that's really where you start changing things.
So one of the things we do is, bring people together to experiment with ways of bringing these new technologies into their practice. And then I'll just show you the next clip, which will just talk a little bit about how this is one of the advisors talking about how it isn't necessarily about making a virtual piece after going through the lab. It's really about changing the way that you think about what is possible. So I'll just go straight into that. This one should have audio too.
Genuinely, I have learned something from every single artist on this residency. We are kind of stuck with culture fitting these particular boxes, the ritual of theatre or dance or film, and the world is changing a lot more rapidly than these cultural institutions are evolving. And so within this new play space of interaction and maybe VR, but even just having phones, coming and just even experimenting with the idea of taking what you do well and mixing it with this, new interface and not being intimidated, being allowed to say, I don't really understand, I don't know what happens next. Whatever happens to your work, it will always feel different after an experience like this.
So just to talk very briefly about some of the ways that we're thinking about what this work actually does. One is obviously presence. So sorry, these are meant to autoplay, but again, technology will tech. It doesn't really matter. Presence, maybe you could just get them to play while I talk. One of the affordances of virtual reality is this sense of presence. And when you feel like you are in an experience, it actually does things to the way that you remember the experience and remember the story. And there's a lot of really interesting research from Mel Slater and Jeremy Bailenson and others around actually how we process memories. Now, obviously, there's a very dark side to this, right? That you, in terms of propaganda and things like that, especially with the convergence with AI now. But when used well and ethically, actually putting someone into an experience where they feel that sense of presence can be incredibly powerful for creating different responses to a story. And then there's also obviously embodiment, where you can embody, in this case, you won't see the video, but you can embody a tree and actually have the sense of what it feels like when you're in a forest that's been cut down. And then finally, world building. Now, world building is being used in many, many disciplines, in urban planning, climate futures, but being able to actually build a world to try out new things, to try out new futures, and to create new kinds of storytelling is really exciting. There is now, I don't think this is going to play, but there is now the ability to auto-generate worlds with AI. Again, we're really interested in Electric South in exploring the progressive and protopian possibilities for this, but also through our research, which is another side of the work that we do, looking at actually what that means for artists in Africa when these worlds can be generated at the click of a button, literally. You can just put in a prompt saying, build me an Arctic retreat and I want to be a dog running through it, and bingo, that could be your world, if that is the sort of world you want to build. Okay, here you go. So this is, you can actually see them just put in a prompt, and then that world is built. So again, I think with Electric South, it isn't just the individual projects that we make, although we are really excited about that. Right now we're working with archives in Lesotho, South Africa, and Malawi to really explore how you can surface these stories and reach new audiences with these incredible archives. But it is also about what can we do with these new technologies when they're more accessible globally, and when you put them in the hands of artists and these visions are not going through one lens. So I think that for us is where we're at right now. And this is a quote that I really love about really, it matters what stories make worlds and what worlds make stories. And at the moment, a lot of the stories that we are creating are very, very limited. And we really need to expand that. And we are trying to do that through new technologies. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sky Dillon Robbins. Thank you again, Cara, for having us here. I'm the founder and executive director of the Video Consortium, or VC for short. I'll just begin. So the context of why we at VC do what we do is that inevitably we all live in a video-first world, and video is these days the primary way that people essentially consume the internet and build the world around them and understand their world. And so at VC, we support the people behind the camera and increasingly the ones in front of them. So Video Consortium is a local first global nonprofit, and we are growing every day, and today we're the world's largest vetted nonfiction video community and network in the world. When I say the words nonfiction video, I mean folks who span documentary, journalism, and the burgeoning, as we all are aware, content creator sphere, the ones who are more news focused. So I'm just gonna catch up. So we support, at this point, new folks join us every day, over 7,000 nonfiction video storytellers. I have some updated stats since we last made this, across more than 850 cities in 90 countries. And we support folks in a variety of ways through events, programs, mentorship, incubators of all kinds. But the reason why I'm up here and the program that I am the most excited about, that we're working on, and that Video Consortium has the incredible honor to continue working on with the Skoll team, Gabriel and Phil, is the Solution Storytelling Project. And so before I talk about SSP, we're going to watch a trailer of the latest cohort that we just finished across Asia. And so if we could play that short video, we will continue after.
अच्छा आ जाओ ऐसा शर्माओ मत आजकल के ज़माने में कौन शर्मा रहा मॉडर्न ज़माना है
गांव में ना तो सब लोग यही सोचते हैं कि लड़की है वो घर का ही काम करेगी तो उसको पढ़ा लिखा के और बाहर इधर उधर भेजने से क्या फ़ायदा।
मैं बड़ी होकर टीचर बनना चाहती हूँ।
जो आंकड़ा शुरू हुआ है उसको हमें आगे तक लेके जाना, ये हमारा प्रयास होना चाहिए।
স্যানিটারি ন্যাপকিন কে কে ব্যবহার করি স্যানিটারি ন্যাপকিনের প্যাকেট সেরকমই অত লজ্জার কিছু নাই पुलिस में ज्वाइन क्यों करना है
सैल्यूट करते हैं पुलिस से
सुनाई दे रही है आपको आवाज ये सांस ले रहा है आपके बच्चे
सरजोली में एक फर्स्ट महिला हूँ मैं जो खुद ड्राइव करती हूँ।
मेहनत तो बहुत है हमारी मेहनत तो अनगिनत है
अभी सपना ही अधूरा है।
The Solution Storytelling Project is a collaborative filmmaking fellowship where we pair local filmmakers with incredible social entrepreneurs or NGOs who are doing excellent work in those local regions. And together, over the course of a year, they create a solutions-focused, character-driven short documentary about that work being done. We've made 50 films to date. It's been going for 4 years. We started across Africa, then went to Latin America, just finished Asia, and then we're coming back to the continent of Africa. And the results of this work has been really incredible. And just to say a few things, at the end of every year, so to speak, the filmmakers are upskilled, so to speak. They are surrounded by a team of essentially a support system where they can make more connections, get more jobs, level up their work even more and harness their talent. And then the organizations at the end of each year receive a bunch of collateral materials to go with their short film, as well as an impact strategy to make sure that their film enters the world in an impactful way, so to speak. The other thing worth noting is that VC has an interesting model in that we also have a bunch of media organizations in our network, and we kind of serve as this editorial, objective org that a lot of media organizations want to talk to, and so we're able to get some of those films placed in media institutions, which is a really nice thing in film festivals. So the films have been screened millions of times to date, and millions of people have seen them. And every year, as Gabriel and I joke, it's always an experiment, right? Every film is an experiment, and we continue to learn things every single film that we make and with every experience. And so we have learned a boatload, but I'm going to share 5 takeaways that we've learned, that if you're a funder who's thinking about how to ensure that the work of your grantees is being spread in an effective way, or if you're an NGO who's just doing incredible work and you want to learn about new ways to get your stories out there. So I'm just going to, before we do that though, I'm going to show some amazing behind the scenes snaps from different filmmaking teams and the organizations that they worked with. These are across the past 4 years of how we've been doing this. Here we go to the first one. So the first learning is that in a way, these days, every company needs to be a media company, or every organization needs to be, in a way, a media organization and think like one, because of course the work comes first. Affecting change on the ground in the communities that you're serving is the most important. And concurrent with that, how that work is being messaged to the world in this oversaturated media environment that we're living in is also extremely important. And so ensuring that there are resources dedicated to making sure the work is messaged in the right way. And I'm not just talking about money, but just, thinking power and staff time to be able to hone your media strategy in a way that is uniquely you, so that it can break through the noise. And when people see something on social or on YouTube that is yours, they will go, aha, I see that is that organization. So that's the first one. The second one is what is the hook? So with every visual story, and we continue to work on this in all of the films that we collaboratively make, but what is the hook? What is the thing that will allow an audience member to be pulled into the story? And even if they may not care about the subject that's being covered, that will reveal that kind of universal truth that will make people care and thus donate, get involved, learn more, etc. One way of putting that is a term that I have learned about and you have used throughout my whole career, but the relatable chord. So what is that relatable chord of the story, and how can we plant that within the first 5 to 30 seconds, the cold open, as one says in filmmaking. And then people want to hear from people. So there is this ubiquitous term that people trust people, not brands anymore. And so ensuring that as one messages about one's organization, the idea of having a character-driven film or a front-facing person who is communicating that story goes so much longer than just having a typical promo video, where people can really relate on a character-driven level. The fourth is that shorter isn't always better, but it often is. When you're in a theater, when you're watching a feature, you gotta have the breathing room, of course, but on the internet, it's tough. And so making sure that one trims the fat, that one keeps the story going no matter what, in a really quick way, goes a long distance. And we continue to work on that too with our filmmakers because they take such beautiful cinematography. The last one is that exporting the final cut is really when the work begins. And for the filmmakers in the audience, I think we can all commiserate on that you work so hard to make a film and then you want to be done. But we know that, and Geepa's here, Doc Society is here, impact strategy is so key to ensuring that there are clear goals that go along with the film that you're making, if you're making a video, and making sure that one is thinking about that even before the production begins. So that's something that we've also really been learning about and stressing as we collaborate with filmmakers. So that's the Solution Storytelling Project. We are so honored to be able to continue doing this work with Skoll, and more films are coming out from the SSP Asia cohort, and there is a very small QR code if you want to watch the films, and if you want to learn more about the program, you can talk to Gabriel or to Phil or to me, and we'd love to tell you more. So thank you.
So Sandy, as we're getting you set up, I just want to pull out a couple of common themes that you see here that you will have maybe thought about. Iris's North Star is bringing concrete benefits back to story source communities, right? So we're starting ground up. We're listening to the community stories, their perspectives, and building up from there. Every single example that you've heard from here also models that in a very similar way, and it really reflects the way a lot of social entrepreneurs work as well. What is the need at the community level, at the individual level, and how do we scale up from there? So I just wanted to pull that out for you and say that it's actually a design component of the way that we think about our work. Sandy Hartz.
Thank you so much. I'm actually going to come down Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So nice to see you all. I'm Sandy Hers. I am a longtime philanthropy executive at Skoll for 16 years, doing a lot of the storytelling work here, and found myself a few years ago when I was starting to think about sort of what's next for me, needing to understand our really fast evolving world before I sort of jumped back in and figured out what I would specifically do. And to do that, I talked to 100 people across my network who were venture capitalists and technologists, who were artists, who were social entrepreneurs and grassroots executives and philanthropy CEOs, and asked them all a set of questions, and concluded at the end of all these conversations that we actually have everything we need to create a world of peace and prosperity. We're just surrounded by all the wrong narratives. The world feels like it's moving in the wrong direction because it is, but also we're not galvanizing towards the future we want because we don't have those stories being told of what's possible, and we don't see it and we don't believe in it. And so it's an imperative, I believe, for philanthropy to be betting on storytellers and artists and be putting forward those visions of the world as it could be so that we can come together to move toward it. So that was sort of the premise that Iris came in and said, hey, do some more interviews. Talk to people in the narrative ecosystem who have lots of perspectives on that, and see what you learn in that deep dive that can inform how the narrative ecosystem can evolve. So I didn't actually mean to hit that. That's very exciting. So I did that. And here's what I learned. I'm going to spend sort of the next 8 minutes describing it. The slides are meant to kind of quickly guide us through it. At the end, there will be a QR code where you can download the whole report. So don't feel like you have to take a lot of notes as you go, but feel free to ask questions afterwards. So let's start, and this is less for this room, but I think it's important to say, why do narratives matter? And I used to think narratives were important because they were a way of persuading. They were a way of getting other people to agree that what I thought was important should also be important to them. And it can be that, but that's actually quite tactical. And narratives are really cultural infrastructure. It's how we individually and collectively create knowledge and meaning. It's how we understand the world together. We understand who belongs and who doesn't, who we are. It's how we create agency and collective imagination for communities that have not had narrative power historically, and our future needs to be putting them at the center of and giving them that narrative power so that the future that we imagine is one that they've helped to create. So in order to do that, we need to look at the state of the narrative ecosystem. We need to get these amazing stories out, create them and get them out into the world, but we need the infrastructure to do that. And the reality is that that infrastructure is really being challenged right now. We're seeing the collapse of legacy media. We're seeing less trust in institutions. We're seeing the fragmentation of the attention economy. We're seeing streamers and platforms consolidating and getting the aperture for what gets picked up and distributed getting smaller and smaller. And the people who get to decide what gets through that aperture are increasingly of one type of view in the world, of sort of the tech billionaire class. And we need, in our pluralistic future, to get there, we need to hear from everybody. We need all the voices. We need all the storytellers and all the stories, not just the ones that appeal to one particular slice of the world. So as we're seeing this privatization and this tightening, we also need to be aware that with AI and social media, that is only going to get worse. That algorithms are going to start to decide what we see, and in so doing, what we believe. And so the operating system for democracy is really now, with the collapse, particularly in the US, or potential collapse of public media, increasingly dependent on these platforms that are in the hands of a few people. And so funders are at the same time kind of pulling back because they're unsure whether to be investing in the legacy infrastructure or investing in the future. They don't know which future infrastructure is the one that's going to win, so they don't want the money not to go where it should go. So we're seeing less money for films, less money for impact. And so this is what I think the people in this room have probably experienced, and it can be pretty scary. But at the same time, what I heard was a lot of positive news about renewal, experimentation, and networked growth. So there are amazing models out there for how people are coming together and collaborating and mutual infrastructure, like organizations like Color Congress emerging. We're seeing new models for both production and distribution. So making your own audience, finding your own funding. We're seeing impact be more at the center in this time because there are built-in audiences. So if you are making a film that has to do with climate people are going to show up for it. If you're making a film about global health people are going to show up for it. So there's a lot of opportunity in the impact space that didn't exist before. And then there's a lot of innovation in the funder community around collaborative funds that bring money closer to the people who know the most about how it can best be deployed. So overall, what does this mean? The landscape of influence is shifting. So it's shifting from institutions, so individual institutions having the influence, to networks having the influence. From broadcast, I just need to get picked up by a streamer and then everybody's going to see my film. Even if you're picked up by a streamer, it's not necessarily clear that people are actually going to find your film. And increasingly, people are not getting picked up by streamers. So you really have to know how to become deeply relational, to work through affinity economies, influencer networks, and others who can recommend, and people are, particularly in Gen Z and beyond, taking their recommendations of what to watch from people that they trust. So you have to be working those networks. It's from persuasion to belonging, and it's from messaging to world building. And if we want to be able to do that, we have to take advantage of what I'm calling the new cultural power centers. So that means, and I'll just run through these quickly, I have a lot more information in the deck, please read more later. Local and grassroots networks. So you saw that with Sunshine Cinema. We have to be able to distribute in local and resilient ways that cannot depend on the big pipes, because the big pipes at this point may come and go. We need to leverage the influencer and creator economy. We need to not be afraid of artificial intelligence and leverage it, and at the same time manage for the risks that it poses. So we need to take both those things into account. We need to be engaging with games. Alan Gershenfeld is here, and he's an executive in the Games for Change space. I encourage you to talk to him about some of the work that he's done with particularly a game working with indigenous communities that's reached 15 million people and was co-created with them, and has embedded documentary in it. So it's the fusion of different types, and games reach twice as many people as film and music combined. So we have to be thinking, where are the people, and meet people where they are. And finally, we need to be using humor and creating emotional resilience. We need to not always be so earnest and focused on the facts. That's important, but it's not going to change anybody's mind. We've all seen that. But humor and satire has been changing people's minds and cracking things open since the time of Socrates. And so it's a core part of how people think. And at the intersection of all of those things, we have to be doing world building. World building is immersive. It brings people fully into an experience where they can imagine that future or imagine themselves in that world. So one story, one film will maybe affect people for a moment, maybe sort of shift their perceptions a bit, but they won't be able to fully imagine that future that we all want and believe that it's possible unless they can really be immersed in it. And Alan coined the term Marvelization for this. So you think of the Marvel universe. We need to do what Marvel has done, with positive speculative futures and create multiple touch points, multiple ways, different kinds of stories, games, films, whatever it may be, fantasy novels, that help people experience that world. So what does that mean for philanthropy today? So we should be prioritizing speculative futures, investing in alternative distribution, leveraging multiple media approaches, embracing risk and doubling down on what works rather than holding back and saying we have to figure out exactly what's going to work. We can see that investing in narrative works. The far right has been investing for the last 50 years, and you can see it all around us. We need to be investing too. There shouldn't be a question of whether it works. And we have to trust our grantee partners. And most importantly, the funders who are currently in this space, we all can see that there isn't enough funding to go around and kind of grease the skids and do all the things that need to be done. So we need to de-risk and make it easier for other funders to come into this space and understand why it's important so that we can do all the things that need to be done. And why? Because investing in the future narrative infrastructure will create durable pipes for the distribution that we want. It'll expand storytelling and audiences beyond what we've traditionally been able to reach. We can invest in audience building infrastructure that will prioritize deep relational engagement. We can reimagine sustainability and models of practice, so ways that filmmakers and storytellers can make a living while they're doing this work. And move from funding content to supporting community governance and build resilience using narrative as emotional infrastructure. So I realize that's a lot. And what I would say is if I had one thing that I wanted everyone to sort of take away that I learned from this work, it's that we all know changing the world is a team sport. And we can't do this work alone. And whatever your issue is that you care about, if you care about the climate, if you care about democracy, if you care about racial justice, you're going to need people to come along with you. And if those people can't see and imagine a world where that change is possible, they're not going to believe that the work you're doing is possible, and they're not going to invest at the scale that people need to in order to make that change possible. We all have to be investing in narrative futures in order to set the stage for the change that we care about. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sandy. And applause for everybody, all of the presentations. One of the things that we wanted to do here is not talk about what all the challenges are, but actually offer ways forward. So all of these are models for ways forward that you can be thinking about. We have just a few minutes. We have a hard stop at 9:30, just so folks know. But I'd love to, if we have a microphone in the room, I'd love to not get Q&A because we have about 7 minutes, but I'd love to get reflections. Capture some reflection statements, like what you've been thinking about as you've been listening to this. And then I'm going to come back for just a final reflection thought from each of you as we close out this section. But I'm wondering if anybody has a reflection that they want to offer, and be mindful, keep it pretty condensed. And Alan, I'd love it if you might want to say something as well.
My name is Daniel, and I think
Daniel, can you give your name and your affiliation?
Daniel Harris and Kendra IO. We are a non-profit building technical things, and I'm interested in your view of technology because it feels like we're suffering from it, but but we can create it too. And I'm just, the platforms we use for distribution, all of these kind of things, and for interacting. We can influence those as well, and I'm wondering, is there much? There hasn't much been. Obviously, this is a storytelling bit, but we can build stuff too. So it's and it feels like there's just disconnect. Sorry, it's the first time at Skoll between this side and there's a whole technological world up there. People want to do good, but I don't know if there's a conversation happening between, and that would be really interesting for that conversation to happen.
That's excellent.
Or people building infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
That's great. If we have another Fred, and then maybe Alan, and then one other.
You know, as a journalist trying to navigate this disrupted
Fred,
landscape.
could you?
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Fred de Sam Lazaro with PBS NewsHour, and a veteran Skoll person in terms of attending between 10 and 20. One of the things that really impresses me is how much of a moving target truth is as we seek it. And a quote that's attributed to Václav Havel really sticks with me. He said, "Keep the company of people who seek the truth. Run from those who have found it." And that is our perpetual challenge, I think, as we try and navigate into this future that only people like Alan have concretized, in a sense, as best as anyone can.
Great, thank you. So we have technological infrastructure, storytelling, and the search for truth. It's excellent.
Alan Gershenfeld, former chairman of Games for Change. I used to run Activision Studios, which is a big game company. Have been doing world building with a company called Experimental Design, lots of stuff. I'm going to build on, Sandy, something that you said in terms of world building. I'll mention a talk that I did recently. You can Google this video. I was looking at the future-facing video games. These are the big $100 million games set in the future. Billions and billions of lean forward hours, 100% dystopian. And I put together a montage to What a Wonderful World, just to hit home that if we're spending billions of hours in these worlds, that's a little bit scary. But I want to add something, because not only do we need the collective visions, and it's different collective visions of what I call evocative, aspirational, and achievable futures, what's often missing once you start to get those futures is the individual and collective agency to urge them into existence, and even more, the feedback loops that I'm making a difference individually and collectively. And that's the essence of game design. If you're interested, we can talk about games for impact, but the agency and the feedback loops around goals you're individually and collectively invested in has to go with the world building. And there's a real art and craft to world building, which offline we could talk about.
Fantastic. Just because they are going to be resetting the room, I just want to, like 20 seconds, talk about like the human feedback loops that you actually work with in evolving your work, or the tech, you know, if you have a thought about AI and tech and the interface, it'd be great to hear it. So we're just going to go straight down the row.
So I guess I'm biased because I come to this work through anthropology, so I don't necessarily think of scale in mass numbers, but more the one-to-one. And for us, we're doing about 350 screenings a year, reaching thousands of audience members, but it's really about that space that's being built, the young person that's creating that space, the work that they're getting from it, the caterer making money from it, the audience members, the jobs that are going around it, and through that one-to-one every week, building those feelings of that you can come together, that you can be face-to-face, you don't always have to engage on your phone. I think the power does lie in that, because at the end of the day, we are human, and we need to remember that, and we need to not forget how to engage with one another.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll be quick. I mean, absolutely, Alan, what you were saying about agency, I think that is something that I think about all the time in the work that we do. It's one of the things that I love when I actually see audiences, and the artists creating, but then the audiences actually interacting with the pieces we create and what that agency does. And I think that also connects to this idea of building the tech, because I've always been so passionate about playful tech and people actually being able to undo things and put them back together and really feel like citizens and not just consumers and customers. And I think that's really important. So for me, it's, you know, when I say people power tech, I really mean it. And I think part of that is also the power of refusal. You know, I mean, I agree that we need to engage with AI, but like some of that stuff is absolutely dangerous and horrific, and we shouldn't be engaging with all of it. So we need to know what we're talking about, and we need to try things. But sometimes it's about saying, no, I'm not going to use this. This is dangerous, and it's not being built in a way that I want to have anything to do with, and I'm going to build my own thing. So I'd say agency and the power of refusal.
I love that. I just want to come back to the fact that this is a transformative moment in time. I call my work the elephant and the butterfly, because I feel like, as from a butterfly perspective, we're in the muck of the chrysalis right now. We don't know what the future looks like, and we have to start to collectively envision that and move towards that. And storytelling is critical to that. And using all the tools in the toolbox and going where people are and moving forward with optimism for what can be, because it's all possible. We're just surrounded by the false constraints about the way the world has to be. and we can, in fact, make a different future real for people, and storytelling is the way.
Great, Sky. Last 10
yeah,
words.
no, just yeah. Going off of what Sandy said, I mean, my medium is video, but I think the thing that unites us all is this idea of storytelling. Good stories go beyond the format, right? And what it means to be human in this world where technology is surrounding us. Storytelling is what grounds us in that, and so the idea of, you know, we should be, as creative people, embracing more AI, I think, and not be afraid of it. But with that, I think there's so much potential to maintain that human element, because no matter what happens as the world keeps going in the way that it's going, what it means to be human, to love and be loved, and have meaning in our lives. The stuff that everyone here is doing is what is driving it all forward. You know,
that's great. So I'll end with a quote from a colleague of mine, Kamal Sinclair, who talks about storytelling as the operating code for humanity. So if you think about it like that, we can also write a new code. So thank you all for coming early this morning. Thank you to Skoll Foundation, to Phil and to Gabrielle, to Caspian, to Allison, and the whole team back here for running this beautiful show.